Welcome back to the workshop, Handyman. Today we're going to be working on just a little bit different project. You can see I have a nice little swimming pool here. It's a little less than 25,000 gallons. Been put in 1999, so it's been here a pretty good little while, and I changed it over to a salt system back 7 years ago and have loved it. Highly recommend going to the salt system if you haven't. The problem is that after 7 years of the salt system, I have come out here today and found out that my salt generator's not quite working right, and I've got it apart. Now I've got the, this is the unit I have. Now I've pulled this cover off because I've worked on it one other time, or somebody did, and I've had a little trouble with it. It moves the circuit board around, so I've kind of set it off the side. I probably ought to go ahead and try putting it back on there. But I'm going to go over this. I've actually done some research myself on this. And I have not found anybody online that really tells me or shows me these kind of readings. So, like I say, the cell that I have is a T9. It's a Hayward system. It's piped in. This would be your flow switch, which I'm not having any problem with that. The cell itself, the cable comes down and it plugs in right here. And what happens is, this right here, the first setting that normally would come up is going to be your salt level. I'm seeing 300. That should be really more like 3,000. They say that you should be someplace 2,700 to 34. So if this was 3,000, that would be perfect. But I don't think it's doing that. The next reading that we do is going to be our temperature. So my water's 85, so the temperature is reading in the cell properly. That comes right out of the cell. 32.5, that is going to be the voltage on the cell. That should be someplace from 22 to 32, so we're a little bit high on that, but according to the manual anyways. And what I'm going on is the directions here on my cell tell me that. So then you hit it one more time, and oops, sorry. And this is the amperage that it's drawing, and it's drawing absolutely 0 amps through there. So that's not right. So our voltage is high and our amperage is low. That kind of tells me that it's not doing anything at all. Most of the ones I see are reading off is all they say, and so that's where the problem becomes, but I don't ever remember seeing these readings. The next one is after the amperage is the desired output, your P, that's what your knob is going to be if you want to fine tune that in. So that would be 50% if you wanted it right at it. That's the amount of chlorine that it's going to generate for you. I've been told that 50% would be like half the time it's going to be generating chlorine, and the other half it's not. So if you want it to generate more, then you turn it on up. And I kind of monitor mine just by keeping an eye on it with my sticks and measuring it. After that, we go to the next one, which would be the instant salt. And you can see I'm reading absolutely 0 on that. That should be reading what the salt is as it's going through it. The one you normally look at is the average of all over, I think it's a 24-hour period. So I'm reading absolutely 0 content, which is probably why it's not generating anything, and why it has no current to it. So I'm hoping that means that the cell is bad. This AL, I've never found anything. It's a program code. It's something program branding is what the manual says. And the revision, the R is a 1.59. That's the revision of the software on your motherboard, which is the board behind here. And then the T9, this is the one that's actually tells you what cell you have so that the item will work properly. So, and then the next one is back to your average stuff. Now these lights, if I had the manual in there, this bottom light is the inspect cell. That says that, you know, you ought to get that about every, I think it's 500 hours of running. It'll flash and tell you that your cell needs to be cleaned. The next one up is high salt, if it had a high salt. The next one up is your check salt. In other words, it's not reading anything. That's why it's a bright red. If it was a little low, I believe it just flashes. Or if it's real high, it might just flash. But if it's steady on, that's saying you have nothing. And then the next one up would be no flow whatsoever. So, and of course the rest of this is the power. The next one would be saying it's generating. This third one down is going to be super chlorinate. That would be when you pull this switch all the way up. And then remotely controlled would be the last one, and we don't ever see that one. So with all that in mind, it looks to be that this is not generating and it's 7 years old. They say that cells usually last someplace around 5 years, so I think I've probably got my money's worth out of them. So I'm going to go ahead and change the cell out. We'll check the readings on it. In order to do that, we're going to go ahead and shut this one off. I do recommend having your cover on here, not like me. You could get electrocuted in here if you're not careful. So this probably isn't a real safe thing, but it shows you what's under the cover. So we'll be all right with that. You have to wait for this thing because it's got power on, and there's several of these are capacitors in here, and they're going to discharge eventually, and then you'll see this go on out, and then we'll be safe to start working on the unit. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm also going to shut off on mine. There's a timer. I've just got a mechanical timer over here in my box, and we're going to go ahead and shut that off also, and that will kill all the power going to the salt system. So, and it takes a little bit for it to actually wind on down. So we'll kill that and shut that off, and that's the safest way to do that. So, okay, now that it's totally shut off, I had reset this and tried to fool around with it several times. So I'm just kind of give up on that. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this. This is the cable that goes to my cell. So we'll pull this loose and get that off of there. That disconnects it, and we'll undo all these wires and everything here in a little bit. And like I say, it follows around and comes over to our cell. Now to remove the cell, hopefully, I didn't tighten this too awful much, and we'll go ahead and we'll shut the pump down. Because if you don't do that, you'll have a problem. And I put my valve into the closed position. That'll stop everything from flowing back out of the pump. Okay, we shut the valve off on the filter. That put that valve to closed. And then for me, I've actually added valves here also. This is my bottom drain and my filter. So pretty much I have locked the system in, and the only place that I've got any water is going to be trapped out, so it won't go all over the place. I'll get a little bit of water off of this, but it won't be a whole lot. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can bust these loose, which is pretty easy. We'll get a little bit of water on stuff, but that's all right. We just drop that out. And I think they say these don't really matter which way you put them back in, but as far as direction and flow, well, I'm going to keep mine going the same exact way. Check to make sure your gaskets are good. They do have some silicone you can put on there. I don't have any with me anyway right now, so we're going to go ahead and just reuse what we've got. And just be careful putting it back in there. You don't lose the rubber gasket. Put that started a little bit, and then bring this one up, start it. Okay. Put that in the position you want it, and tighten this one down. Okay. That should have that installed. We might have to come back in and hit that with a wrench or whatever. So at this point, we can go ahead and valve the filter back in there. And then we'll turn these two valves back on. And now we're going to go ahead and I've got to run this wire around here and try to get it back to the plug. See if I can get you set up here a little bit. Make sure you can see what I've got going on. We have the cord itself. Take it loose. I can remember back when I put this thing in, like say 7 years ago, this whole Hayward system, which is top rated system, there's nothing wrong with that. The whole system cost me right at $700. And 7 years later, the cell by itself Cost me $700. So glad I don't have to pay anybody to put it in, I'm hoping. So hopefully I'll be able to handle this whole job on my own. That will save me at least a service call on that. Let me untwist this a little bit here. All right. I say I'll have to tie all this back up after we get done, but that won't be no problem. We spin it around and we should be able to slide it right into that groove, plug it back up. That's on in there. All right, now let's see if we can get you, see if we have any luck at all with this thing. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn my timer back on. That'll put some power back over there at the system. And let's see if this has fixed my problem. It's off. It's still reading that 300, so I'm hoping that's not a sign of what's to come. We'll turn it back on and we'll start our pump back up. And we'll go through this and make sure that it's, I've got to check to see if it's still got the other reading in here. You want to go to your T, make sure that's still programmed as a T9. The flashing light is the low flow. That's not an error with the cell yet. So we'll let that run until that stabilizes. It takes a couple of minutes. Our green power light's on, so that means we're good there. This should change here eventually, but we got to wait till it runs a minute, I think. Just a matter of waiting. And there we go. Okay, so it is now gone to green, so it says it's generating. We'll give it a minute here. It says 300 here, but that's going to be because our instant is not going to be. Okay, so the third one, which was our voltage, remember, was 32 something. And now it's down to the 27.5, which is right where it ought to be. Our amperage, which is the next one out, was 0. And now it's at 5.65, so that's good. Our output's right at 50%. And our instant salt is now 34, which is very good. And our AL didn't matter. Our other is good there. It's a T9. So now to recalibrate that, if we want to get that back to it, we can take it back to that negative 34. And I think we have to go up and back down. Let's see if this thing's going to do it now. I just had another red light come on, so let's see if we can. Now it's reading 1600, but that's not a good reading yet. I think I must have, our instantaneous is going back to 0. I don't know why, so we're going to have to let that sit and see if it'll clear itself out. That should take care of it if the board is not bad. So let's let that run for a little bit and we'll see if that fixed it. Okay, it's run now about 2 or 3 minutes. I went ahead and I shut it off, went back to the off, put it back on to auto, and it is now, I went in and I calibrated the salt level, which was down at the instantaneous, and you hold your, or you push up the superchlorinate and bring it back down, and that will go ahead and recalibrate that to what it's supposed to be. Looks like my salt's a little bit high because I think I've been fighting with this thing for most of the year. It's kind of been giving me a little bit of fits, but it was still chlorinating and it was still keeping it, but I was running my percentage all the way up here around 90 to 100% to keep the chlorine up. It was barely keeping up, and normally I'm down here in the 60 or 70% when the water's at 90 some degrees. So right now my water is 86 degrees. Voltage and everything is good. Amperage is good. The percentage is good. This dial does not read exactly that. That's why you have that, but it don't matter. And you see my instantaneous is 3500, and if I click that up and back down again, it'll do my average also. We'll calibrate it at the instantaneous, and now it'll keep track of what it is. And other than that, everything looks good. I think we're generating. My pool is definitely low on chlorine, so I'm going to go ahead and flip it up to super chlorinate. That'll keep it on super chlorinate for about 24 hours. So we'll go ahead and do it for now, and then I'll shut it back off a little bit later on. You don't need to leave it up onto that. It's going to shut itself off, they say anyway, so best to leave it down. So there we go. That's what it takes to change out your cell. Hopefully that's been somewhat informative to you and show you what a bad cell looks like when it's reading. We got the cover back on, so we're safe there. We'll go ahead and close this one up and get ready to go swimming. I hope that's helped you, and we'll catch you on the next project, and hopefully it's not another one of these, because can't afford to replace those too often. And the pool looks good, so we'll go ahead. I need to go do a little bit of mowing maybe. We'll catch you on the next one. Please like, subscribe, and any comments are more than welcome. Thanks again.